Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I, Pragya, special correspondent in Governance Now, welcome you all at Cloud 2020 with NIC. The conference is a capacity building platform. Therefore, we request you to share as many questions as you can. So there will be live interactions after the discussion. Yeah. And now we have Mr. Pankaj Shukla, Director System Engineering, VMware India. So I would like to invite Mr. Pankaj Shukla, Director System Engineering, VMware India, to give his tech talk.
Hi, thanks, Pragya. Can you give me the access to share my desktop?
Yes. Yeah, it is there.
Yes. Yes, thanks, Pragya, and thank you everyone for joining. It's a very warm welcome to all of you in this exclusive webinar for NIC. While you are all waiting to hear from Neeta ma'am and other esteemed delegates from NIC, I would like to take you through VMware point of view on some of the new technology areas and emerging technologies areas for building digital foundation. So I'm sure that most of you would have seen this slide from VMware where we basically show our vision. The vision is, and this is the end state which we want to take our customers through the journey, where we want to build a digital foundation where we want to give a platform to run any application on any cloud and to deliver those applications to any device with security inbuilt in each of these layers. Now, when we talk of this vision, all the VMware's products and solutions are designed to basically realize this vision and align to realize this vision. And we have converted this vision into 5 solution platforms for our customers to consume. So, for example, our customers want to build a private cloud or hybrid cloud, or they want to manage across multiple clouds. Most of the customers, including government and defense organizations, are looking to basically containerize the application and use Kubernetes as a platform to modernize their applications. Customers looking to transform their networking and security, and from end user point of view, we want to provide a digital workspace for them to provide the best possible employee experience. Now, these are the 5 solution areas which we see our customers, which are strategic to them, and we have aligned our solution and the vision in these 5 areas. Now, what I'll do is that I'll take a couple of minutes in each of these five areas to take you through what is VMware doing. Now, when we talk of cloud, hybrid and multi-cloud, essentially, if you know and if you are trying to build a private cloud, you will deal with these components and these building blocks of building a private cloud, which is your physical infrastructure. You want to run a virtualization management on top of that. There'll be some kind of container management platform. It will require automation, orchestration, and the operations and the log management layer. What happens is that when you are trying to deploy and integrate and build the private cloud with all these components, it becomes very, very complex, especially if you are trying to deploy it at multiple edge sites and multiple data centers. It can become really complex to deploy, manage, patch, update, and upgrade. And that's where the customers basically take years to build a private cloud and run it at scale. Now, what we have done is that we have come up with a prescriptive reference design, which kind of helps you automate the deployment of all these building blocks and automate the patching, update, and upgrade process of the entire platform, so that you can get private cloud in the shortest possible manner. And that is a platform which we call as VMware Cloud Foundation. And this VMware Cloud Foundation helps you build your private cloud in the shortest possible time, in matter of days, otherwise which you typically take in the matter of months and years. So that is what we do with VMware Cloud Foundation, which takes you to the private cloud. Now, what we have also done is that we have taken the same VMware Cloud Foundation platform to all these hyperscalers and public cloud providers like vTeam panel public cloud providers, or these hyperscalers like AWS, Azure, Google, and IBM Cloud and Oracle. Now, all of them provide VMware Cloud Foundation as a service to customers, so that you have Cloud Foundation and the same platform running on your on-prem on the private cloud, as well as the same platform is also running on the public cloud, and you have a consistent infrastructure across these multiple clouds and consistent operations. And that is what will provide you an ability to migrate your workloads from private cloud to the public and public cloud to the private, and in a completely seamless manner. So basically, when you're looking to migrate applications to different clouds, whether it is possible that you might be running multiple siloed private clouds and you want to migrate your apps from one private cloud to the other private cloud, or if you want to migrate applications from on-prem to the public cloud provider and bring it back, the cloud foundation layer, which spans across these multiple clouds, makes it pretty simple by providing you a completely consistent infrastructure. So that is what we are trying to do essentially from the private cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud management perspective. Now the next piece, which is very, very critical, is modern apps, because applications are at the core of the entire digital transformation. If any organization is trying to do digital transformation, apps come at the center of this entire paradigm. Now, most of the government and defense organizations are also trying to use the microservices and container-based architectures to build their applications, whatever new applications they are building or the refresh which is coming. And what we have seen is that that Kubernetes has applications in terms of running the modern applications on the platform. Now, VMware has invested very heavily into this with our in-house cloud native capabilities and a number of acquisitions which we have done in the open source space, which is Bitnami, Heptio, and Pivotal. Open source Kubernetes community. Now, what we have done is that we have integrated the in-house capabilities and these acquisitions to come up with a solution which is called VMware Tanzu, and which can help you build, run, and manage modern applications modern applications, and you can run it from anywhere, from any cloud. Now, here what we do is that in the build part, if an organization wants to build a modern application using containers and Kubernetes architecture, we provide the tools and technologies like Spring Runtime or Build Service or Application Catalog to basically code, the assemble and curate the applications, so that the build part of the Tanzu solution portfolio takes care of providing all the tools and technologies required to build an application. And then when you want to run those modern container-based and microservices-based application, we provide the enterprise-supported version of Kubernetes, which is available on vSphere and or public cloud platforms, where you can run that application seamlessly with all the tools and technologies and infrastructure services along with the Kubernetes. And finally, when you are trying to run Kubernetes and clusters across multiple data centers, clouds, and multiple teams, you need a tool to manage and monitor the Kubernetes clusters and applications across those multiple teams, clouds, and data centers. So this is what we are trying to do with VMware Tanzu to take care of the entire application modernization portfolio. Now here, what we have also done recently is that with vSphere 7.0, we have integrated Kubernetes inside vSphere, so that you can get an ability to run VMs as well as containers from the same platform. So the cloud foundation which I was talking about, once you have vSphere 7 there, you will have Kubernetes right there inside your cloud foundation layer, so that from same cloud foundation platform, you'll be able to run Kubernetes, VMs, containers, etc., so that your admins can get access to VMs and VMs and containers from the same platform, and your developers can get API access to VMs and containers when they are consuming the infrastructure to develop and deploy their applications. This kind of provides you an ability to build a cloud platform which is ready for both VM-based applications as well as container-based applications. Now, the another part which is very important is the networking and security. Now, when it comes to data center, branch networking or cloud networking, you know that NSX has been the platform which is used by more than 13,000 customers worldwide. And when we initially came up with switching and routing and software-defined networking and basic firewalling capabilities. But over time, we have added capabilities like layer 7 firewall, IDS and IPS, advanced load balancing like GSLB, WAF capabilities, the container networking and service mesh which is required, and branch networking with SD-WAN. So NSX kind of becomes that networking and security platform which takes care of the entire networking and security of your VMs, containers, data centers, clouds, and all those components which in a seamless manner and in a software defined manner. Now, while NSX takes care of the security intrinsically from the perspective of the network and branches, what we have is from the endpoint perspective, VMware acquired a company called Carbon Black, which was an inventor of a technology called endpoint detection and response a few years back, where Carbon Black provides you all these capabilities like next generation antivirus, endpoint detection and response, threat hunting, managed detection, audit and remediation from a single agent. Now, Carbon Black per se has got portfolio which where you have the entire suite of security services coming from antivirus, EDR, managed detection, audit and remediation coming from SaaS service. But at the same time, we also have on-prem solutions for endpoint detection and response and application control. So most of the government and defense organizations who do not want to go to this to the public cloud to avail security services, VMware Carbon Black provides that option, that on-prem option as well for endpoint detection and response. And this is kind of the when it comes to threat hunting, threat intelligence, endpoint detection and response, Carbon Black is best in the business and is being used by most of the customers, all modern cloud native and the modern technology based security platform, which provides an intrinsic way of addressing security needs from the endpoint perspective. And kind of it supports all the endpoints, as you can see that whether it is Windows, Mac, Linux, or the platforms or the workloads which are running on the public clouds. So that way we take care of the networking and security part from the networking from the data center and branch perspective, as well as from the endpoints and the devices perspective. Finally, which is the most important piece, especially during this time, is that how do you basically deliver all those applications which are running in from your data center and cloud to your endpoints, to your end users who are using multiple types of devices. It could be Android, iOS, or macOS devices sitting at anywhere, whether they might be sitting at home, they might be sitting at in the office or on the move. How do you basically deliver those applications seamlessly to any of those devices? So how do you manage those devices? How do you deliver those applications seamlessly to those devices and end users who are sitting there, which could include services like virtual desktops, unified endpoint management and application management, etc. So this entire suite of basically endpoint management, device management, and modern management capability is given by the platform which is called VMware Workspace ONE platform, which holistically addresses the all end user and the citizen, the employee experience which users might be using to access the applications. And this is something which is very critical at this point of time during the pandemic, where users are basically need to have access to the applications and cloud services at their home, from their home, or on the move. And this VMware Workspace ONE platform provides that a single platform to deliver the applications to end users in a pretty seamless and with an excellent experience which users get. So finally, as I wrap up, these are the 5 solution platforms which we have built for digital transformation. If you want to build private cloud or hybrid cloud, or if you want to manage across multiple clouds and you are using hyperscalers like AWS, Azure, and Google, how do you manage across multiple clouds, including your on-prem data center? How do you build your modern applications, which is a very critical thing right now, and most of the organizations are building applications based on Kubernetes and container-based architectures. How do you build and how do you run it on the Kubernetes platform? How do you transform networking and security? Because that is one of the fundamental elements of this entire digital transformation, digital foundation, because that provides you the connectivity across multiple clouds, data centers, VMs, and containers. And finally, it is the most critical, and at the center of this entire paradigm is the user itself, that how do you enhance his experience and how do you deliver applications to type of devices and choice of his type which you want to use the devices. So these are the 5 solution platforms which VMware is focused on and have built solutions. We'll be happy to work with you in any of these platforms. We'll be happy to talk to you in depth. Probably at this point of time, we don't have time to take questions, but you can type in your questions in the chat window, or at the end of the event, we'll have time. We'll take questions there. So thanks a lot, and enjoy the rest of the event, the rest of the conversation we are going to have. Thank you.
Pankaj, it was a great presentation on building digital foundation.
Yeah.
So we are just waiting for Neeta ma'am to join. Meanwhile, you can share your experience with the cloud, and like you were sharing about various technicalities about it.
Yeah, so what we have seen is that most of the customers, which they generally start their journey from a virtualization layer. So first of all, if they want to build a private cloud, what they want to do is that, and most of the organizations are already using virtualization, which they want to virtualize the compute. And after that, what they want is that they want to virtualize network, security, storage, load balancing capabilities, because you want to build all these capabilities in the software layer. And then you want, on top of that, you want to build automation and orchestration and the operations layer, so that you can automate the entire capability of delivering infrastructure and cloud services. So when you combine all of this, basically what we are saying is that all these components and elements first need to be integrated with each other. And when you integrate with integrated, and it should work in a completely seamless manner, so that basically you can, in a fast manner, you are able to deploy it, patch it, update it. And that is what we help customers with the Solution Cloud Foundation, which kind of can help you stand up a private cloud in matter of days, and if you have all the prerequisites ready, probably in matter of hours. Now that is the first stage where you build private cloud. Then after that, if you have built private cloud with Cloud Foundation, the customers are also looking at connecting multiple data centers and probably going to public clouds for some of their applications. They want to extend their data center to the public cloud for handling their scalability need, for the agility needs, etc. So those are the things which we help with, that how do you manage across multiple clouds. And at the same time, as you are delivering your infrastructure for VMs and legacy applications, you also want to make your platform ready for container-based or microservices-based applications. So Kubernetes comes into the picture. Now that is what the innovation which we recently did. For example, within vSphere itself, where we integrated Kubernetes, where you can run both VMs and containers inside the Cloud Foundation platform, so that you can run both kind of applications in your private cloud as well as on the multi-cloud. So that is what we are trying to do with customers, and it is resonating pretty well, even with a lot of government customers as well. And that's what we are doing. And then again, a lot of other things which we are doing related to security, which I would like to talk in a little depth, but probably if we have time, probably we can discuss that as well.
Yes. So we have, I think, 4 minutes to wrap it up. So we have Neeta ma'am online, so you can just wrap it up.
Okay, so thanks everyone, and I think please type your questions in the chat window, and we'll try to respond it right here. But at the end of the event, we are happy to take any questions, or if you have interest in any of those 5 solution platforms we discussed, we can get in depth of any of those areas. So thanks Pragya, and thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for giving us an opportunity to.
Thank you so much, Pankaj.
Yeah.
Welcome, ma'am. So, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome Dr. Neeta Verma, Director General, National Informatics Center, NIC, to have a fireside chat with us. To moderate the fireside chat, we have Mr. Kailash Nath Adhikari, MD Governance Now, and Shri Gaurav Agarwal, Senior Director, Enterprise Business, VMware India. Over to you, Mr. Adhikari.
Thank you so much, Pragya. Ma'am, namaskar. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome, Gaurav. Thank you so much for this tech talk on cloud with NIC. 2020. And I'll first begin with ma'am. Ma'am, we all know that we are living in a pandemic world. So what were the digital transformation initiatives being at the helm of NIC? What were the digital transformation initiatives undertaken by NIC so that a seamless services were assured not only to citizens but also to government organization? And what were your own personal experiences while coordinating with various government organization and ministries during such time when the work from home was the new mandate and is currently also like a new mandate?
Thank you. I hope I'm audible well to everyone.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. See, NIC being the technology partner of the government has been supporting government not only at the central government level, even the state governments and with our district offices, even the district administration to monitor and manage pandemic as well as the associated situations of lockdown and all other challenges which came across. So if I really categorize these initiatives which we have taken during pandemic or supported government, maybe primarily in 3 or 4 main categories. A first line of response, which was when the lockdown happened, was basically video conferencing services. Through this video, we quickly had to, scale our video conferencing infrastructure to be able to support 1,000 to 1,500 video conferencing sessions per day among various functionaries, right from Honorable President of India to Prime Minister, going to cabinet ministers and then chief secretaries to even district administration, because it was needed to understand the situation on the ground and then take appropriate measures. Also see that how do we really take care of various challenges, whether it's essential of supply of essential goods, or it was challenges of shortage of masks or sanitizers and things like this. So a lot of meetings we have facilitated while people were still at home. They were not able to. Initial lockdown, if you remember, movement was extremely, people were scared, and also movement was kind of very, very restricted. So a lot of meetings with the government and a lot of policy level decisions, lot of monitoring of the war rooms. We've supported people running from while operating from their homes. If you remember, this was also a last week of financial year. So the second thing came that we had to do this financial year closing, and which happens only on files, and you to take all those approvals and all. So for that, then we have this solution called e-office, which is basically, all your files are basically moving in the digital form, and digital form, they can move from one office to other office, one ministry to other ministry, from district administration to state. This was already in place, but during this time, suddenly the two requirements came. First, suddenly the utilization of this increased almost, in fact, super exponentially, I should say. There we really got lucky because this was all working on the cloud infrastructure, so we could quickly scale. But second thing is we had to provide now the secure channels for people to access these files and all from home, which was a lot of work because we had to enable everyone to be coming over VPN. Then there were different applications of different departments. So that was this e-office enablement became a big thing, and people, hundreds and thousands of files were, created, processed during this COVID period. Not only financial year got closed successfully, at the same time, lot of these guidelines, policies got formatted, lot of funds got dispersed. All those files we supported moving on file. People could comfortably operate from home, but while the functioning was going on smooth as in fact, during these times, government has to function more than what it normally functions because their regular operations have to happen, and also this special measures to handle these kind of pandemic situations and lockdown situations had to happen. Third thing which happened, if you remember, there was a lot of this migrant labors issue came, and then there was a need for transfer of funds to people who suddenly had no jobs and had no money to kind of this thing. So under MG Narega and various other state schemes. So we have a platform called Direct Benefit Transfer platform, in which the money from the bank from the government can be directly transferred to the bank account of each individual beneficiary. We supported almost every department, the central central government, as well as many of the state governments, UP, Bihar, down south also quite a few states, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, in transfer of funds to these migrant laborers and as well as other beneficiaries who were in distress. Money could be almost instantly transferred to these accounts. That was another big support which was extended. Plus, For the pandemic itself, many of our state offices, work with state government. We have worked with Ministry of Health, right from assessing the situation for the pandemic, supporting the testing activity. We have RT-PCR app, and then going forward to seeing the availability of COVID hospitals, our preparedness. First lockdown, a lot of work was happening. How many COVID hospitals to be opened? How many beds to be put in to take care of the peak situations? A lot of planning and a lot of management in terms of provision of oxygen cylinders, ventilators at the right time. So that a number of systems got developed, management of people under quarantine, getting a status of people in home isolation. So each NIC state center has parallelly supported a lot of systems. But one app which kind of became a national app and a household was Arogya Setu, which all of you are kind of aware, and it is today one of the largest contact tracing app in the world, with 158 million people using it as of today. So like this, it just
Naturally,
happened.
a lot of initiatives were undertaken by NIC so that it could brace up to the situation. Gaurav?
Thank you, and ma'am, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. And to be honest, e-office, for example, whenever I talk to Railtel as well, they keep talking about how successful the transformation of railways has been because of the e-office application deployment for railways through Railtel as well. So that indeed is an application that's transforming the way government officers operate and work. Ma'am, my first question to you was, obviously NIC was first of the block with Meghraj as a cloud being offered to government entities, etc., and that service being in the current pandemic. We see a lot of demand for things like desktop as a service, working from home. So how do you see Meghraj as a cloud evolve to meet such requirements from other government agencies or public sector units when they want these kind of facilities?
Yeah, so in fact, if you look at, as I always say, the cloud has been our one of the key success contributors, I should say, to be able to scale all our infrastructure, whether it's our messaging services, whether it was our e-office itself, and a lot of, like you see during this time, even MyGov as a platform has been doing a humongous service in terms of outreach to citizens. So that also works on our cloud. So that way, cloud has really helped us quickly scaling any application when needed. Work from home is there. In fact, now what we have done, seeing while this uncertainty, we all wish after some time we'll be getting out of it, but I think a lot of good things which has emerged from here, particularly from technology point of view, as I see the virtual VC meetings and work from home or work from anywhere for that matter will continue to happen. It may not be in full-fledged as today because people have seen benefits of it. Sometimes for an hour's meeting, we used to travel for the other side of the country and waste 2 days to just do an hour's meeting because we were not used to, were not really comfortable and had not seen that how effective these meetings could be. But during this COVID, people have appreciated and understood. And today, now when I'm getting a meeting notices, VC is the first default. It's very rarely that you've been asked to kind of come and attend. And I'm sure as we go, so we need to really scale that infrastructure. And lot of initial our VC was all studio based, but all new VC will be cloud based. So we really need to scale infrastructure and VC services. Work from home, we have built a platform which is work from home platform so that the employee or an officer get almost similar environment as he gets in his office, whether it's access to his calendar, access to his PA, or access to commonly used these things, access to commonly used documents. So we have a team in NIC has done a very innovative platform. We're just finalizing it. So we'll definitely need, and desktop as a service also for the development teams will be needed. So we are very actively working on a plan that how do we really scale this infrastructure and bring services. Another thing which we are very actively considering is because now a lot of people have observed the people who had an edge on digitalization, who were already digital, had much less disruption than people who were not that advanced in digitalization because they couldn't continue their services. So the appreciation of technology or digitalization has come in a big way. So I'm anticipating that we'll get a lot of requests from all quarters of government, small government entities to go for digital, having their websites, having their portals, having their backends automated. And today for all these, we need to support cloud service. So we are seeing Why can't we bring a lot of software as a service kind of models, whereas routine things which any government entity will need, they need not really get into development. It should be available to them as a service, and they could simply use it, and they don't really need to bother of sizing and anything. For example, we already have a service which is called secure scalable website as a service, to which we call SWAS. Already almost all district websites have been migrated to this platform. So through this, if tomorrow any entity wants to have a website, they could vary. So we will scale this service. Similarly, if you look at, we have a Service Plus platform, which is a low code, practically no code platform. So in which today, supposing if a small entity wants to deliver a service to citizen, let's say as simple as this, giving a birth certificate. So they don't have to write any code to this. They just go there, configure what is the information they have to ask from the citizen, who will be the officer at the back who will be approving it and who will be issuing it. Just configure those things in that tool and your service is live, and hundreds of state government services have been made live. So these things we want to promote more SaaS kind of a thing, so that it becomes simpler for the newer entities to come on board and digitalize their internal functioning as well as their services.
Sure, ma'am, and I genuinely agree with you on the fact that I think the IT function is appreciated a lot more. For example, I'll just give you a personal example, and I was thinking this just last week as well. For an interview process, I had to fly to San Francisco. The company invested in a business class ticket. For a one-day trip, I spent 4 days going and coming for a 2-hour interview. Right from I went from India to SFO and then came back. So something like that, such a waste of time and resources, which could be so easily done with technology, as long as you have the right experience in built-in technology with the right quality of service. Leading to the cloud question, ma'am, a lot of mature government organizations like Ministry of Finance, departments like CBEC, CBDT, have had their own, or GST, and have their own data centers and their own infrastructures per se as well. Now, with this maturity and this acceptability of cloud coming in more and more, what role do you see NIC to play, or the government's thought process to play on how do we use hybrid as a service, right? For example, how do we not either be completely on cloud or completely be on-prem, but how do we decide what's the right continuum to be on hybrid? And do you see a change in approach happening? And do you see government agencies adopting the hybrid approach as we move forward a little more?
See, if you look at it as government, we had empaneled cloud service providers almost, I think now 2 years ago. So that was an intention that so while we are on-prem, we are again on cloud. So one is a private cloud and other is a public cloud. Obviously, public cloud, because of its economy of scale, can give you far more benefits in terms of quickly giving you a huge resource. So supposing if you have an application where you have some, you perhaps need a huge CPU resource for only, let's say, 1 day in a month, or maybe for 2 hours in a month, or 2 times in a year. So for moving that particular application for a day and then getting those processing done, coming back, this makes a very good proposition. Again, there are a lot of information in the government which is public domain information, simple websites and all. They could also be moved to public cloud easily. There is no this thing. The challenge today is because every ministry need to actually define what is their public information, what is their sensitive information, what is their critically sensitive information. This is something cannot be defined by IT ministry. Each ministry knows the sensitivity of. Once they define this information, then one can say, okay, whatever is your public domain information, or maybe whatever is not so sensitive, can be easily hosted on the public cloud. There's no issue onto it. But many of the departments are yet in the process of doing this classification. So if that gets done, we'll see a lot of traction towards hybrid kind of a situation. Second thing, which I don't know how will it happen, when we engage, like today, we have already empaneled these agencies, the cloud service providers, who are hosting their data centers in India, to which we call CSPs, on GEM. So people can easily go and acquire cloud services on the GEM. The basic services, CPU and those PaaS and IaaS kind of services are there on the GEM, and they can easily go and procure. And some departments have done that job also. But when you do this engagement, you will do for 2 years, 3 years, max for 5 years. That's how government procurements in India are normally there. these clouds have, while they have kept generic, they have also started offering a lot of native services, which are very proprietary to that particular cloud. And which are very attractive proposition, because building an application becomes far more easier if you start using those native applications. So there's a pro to this. But the challenge is, once you have done this, then you have to be continuing on that cloud. So if you've used Lambda service of AWS, then you have to be continuous. Your application will not work anywhere else. But in government, continuing repeated contracts, how will you give it to the same cloud service provider? That is where you get stuck. So either we have to, this, as I said, this native services also has a positive aspect to it. So either the procurement models need to be changed, so that you can, once you have got with one service provider, same could be with Azure also, same could be with Google also for that matter. So either we continue with that particular service provider, there's some kind of procurement model has to come, or these agencies have to think of some kind of interoperability among themselves, so that if I have first 5 years I was on one cloud, and if I want to move it to the other cloud, some kind of migration path or utilities need to be given, so that I easily migrate from. So if these things get addressed, I'll see much more adoption within the government for these hybrid clouds and multi-clouds at the same time.
Sure, ma'am, great answer. And it again brings me to the next question, and you talked about it a little bit, is, for example, with this modern cloud world, most organizations globally are looking at modernizing their applications through use of microservices, use of containers, and then running them through Kubernetes, which truly becomes stateless, right? Then they become the fact that these applications then can be deployed anywhere where you choose. They could be deployed on-prem, they could be deployed on a cloud, and can be moved from a cloud. So how do you see that happening within NIC, and do you see that adoption of that increasing dramatically in the coming months? And how do you see that across the government overall as well?
NIC has a responsibility of not only providing the services, also has a mandate of keep an eye on the upcoming technologies and somehow and work towards adoption in the government. So we had actually realized the potential of these microservices and containers sometime maybe 18 months ago. And since then, we have already started building, and for last 2 to 3 months, we have started offering container services to our existing government users. So in fact, even today, as I'm talking, there are 2 to 3 big projects we are getting on the container services. So it is already there. Now, whether it is cloud, VM, or container, it is very important that applications are also built cloud native, because I also come across sometimes situation, despite having this huge cloud, some applications I'm not able to scale them up because they're intrinsically not designed to scale, kind of a thing. So therefore, not only converting the new applications to be adopting microservice kind of architecture, because that gives you a huge scalability, that gives you huge pluggability, that gives you huge agility at the same time. You can write 2 components in Python, and you can write other 2 components in 2 microservices in Java, and so the kind of flexibility it gives you is humongous. So what we have done to bring, but that is something which has to change from culturally. People have to really understand at the architect level, you need to change. So just before COVID, in the early this year, we have opened a center of excellence of microservices in Cochin. We have a big center in Cochin, and from there now we are doing continuous webinars, and also selected some applications whom we are converting or rebuilding basic using microservice architecture. And once so with all this kind of comprehensive approach, by educating people, by doing some applications, also providing container services, our focus is very much on moving more and more government services to this new kind of architecture. It is also syncing with current COVID situation, where all of us will agree, though we all wish we come out of it very soon, but we also agree with no vaccine around, we are going to be with this uncertain times for at least 6 months to 1 year to come. So whatever we are developing today, there will be a lot of they will need a lot of agility. You will be expected to do changes from time to time, because policies may change, surrounding situations may change. So softwares also have to be designed, or systems have to be designed to be able to adopt those new changes quickly. And there, agile and microservice is the answer. So therefore, it is all the more important that today what we develop, we deploy these technologies. So we have a lot of focus on this, and we're trying to make sure that whatever new we are doing, as far as possible, we apply these new architectures and new technologies.
Sure, ma'am. And just a linked question to your work from home a little earlier. Have you seen a change on the cybersecurity requirements because of work from home and the fact that more and more people have to not now access the same applications and the data center services from anywhere? So how do you see the security landscape? Because the traditional tools and technologies that would have got deployed would have been deployed in a manner where people were coming to an office and then accessing the data center versus now people accessing the same from anywhere and going to a cloud. So do you see a relook at security architectures, the way applications are deployed and consumed by entities?
Yes, of course, because after this, cybersecurity has always been a concern. It has become a bigger concern nowadays. There are multiple dimensions to it. The very first thing, like when we did all this access to home, people give this thing. One of the major effort our teams have to put in to define or design the secure channels, whether it was VPN or whether it was multi-factor authentication, biometrics-based analysis, depending on how sensitive that system was. So all those things had to be thought over and designed. But if this becomes a new normal, then those things happen, case to case basis. We really need to perhaps rework on our cybersecurity policies and bring in these kinds of provisions. There are two things happening when I'm working from home. One, in any case, I'm getting from unprotected networks. Earlier, we were at least certain set of applications or certain rights to applications were only given from the protected network, from the known network. Now somebody could be using a laptop, somebody could be using a mobile phone, so unprotected device, and you could use any public internet to come to it. You had to, both of those things were there. So you need to not only define these high order of secure access, you need to put a lot of effort on your perimeter security of continuous vigil of the traffic happening onto it. With this also, this has happened work from home. I mean that's what I was telling with this virtual meeting happenings. Now meetings have no time. 18 hours a day you are doing meetings, and you are not even given a 4 o'clock one meeting finishes, 5 o'clock next, 6 o'clock next, because that's how a PA knows you're sitting on your seat, so you can easily switch from one VC client. So people have no time. So this access will also be 24, somebody is working in the day, somebody is working in the night. So that also needs to be monitored. And the most critical thing is, because all of us use these mobile phones and our laptops in office, you could put a lot of discipline in terms of keeping the hygiene of these devices to a great extent. But now when you have these devices which are all over, and all of us, each one of us is not that sensitive, especially when I'm talking of my clients, government officials at all levels are not that sensitive. You download all kinds of mobile apps and then they put a malware in your system, and then so those are another risk. So that also we've been really seriously thinking that how should we really go about, because that will add, if you have to secure each and every device each and every government employee is having, this is a huge budget also at the same time. So a lot of internal thinking is going on, that how do you really go about approaching this whole issue in a most optimal manner at the same time.
Sure, ma'am. My last question, in fact, and to be honest, and we have as VMware a point of view on a lot of these things, helping the problems that you just described, whether it's security, whether it's moving to multi-cloud, not get a vendor lock-in with a cloud provider, and how do we help microservices and training people who want to build applications on a modern platform. So my last question, ma'am, is how do you think organizations like us or the private sector can really help NIC better than what we are doing today, or what could we do more to help NIC on the path of digitizing India faster, better, secure? What could we do? What could we do more?
A lot you can do. Everybody can do a lot that way. You see, first of all, in our projects, as you are aware, and we do a lot of outsource in terms of getting a part of the software done from outside. We do a lot of in-source of skilled personnel to be working on the sensitive projects which we do on site. And today, honestly speaking, if I have to give a project and say I need completely microservice, getting a skilled resource itself is a challenge. It's not that easy. Sometimes I have seen people cry for 2 months that I am not getting the right kind of a people. So getting a skilled personnel, particularly in these new technologies, is a huge thing, and I am really looking forward as many of as you can help in getting me this. That's one aspect where we need. Second, as our cloud will increase, our infrastructure is increasing, and our requirement to monitor it practically on 24/7 basis when the traffic will low. We need to get in a lot of automation into our infrastructure management, so that most of things happen on a policy basis, then a human intervention is needed from time to time. So that's another area where we are looking for that, how do we really do it in a most efficient and quick manner. Orchestration at the same time, the automation of big projects, how do you bring automation of the infra management is a main thing. Third, recently we've also opened a lot of center of excellence. We have center of excellence in microservices, center of excellence in artificial intelligence, machine learning, chatbots, and we also have a center of excellence in blockchain in Bangalore. And these all centers are particularly looking for building the possible solutions, pilots, and POCs. They have also rolled out some small applications in the government. So we are really looking for skilled people in these areas, as well as experienced people in these areas who can come and work with us. That how do we deploy these technologies into government solutions, help government deliver its services to the citizens, particularly the last mile citizens, or the people in rural India, where we have challenge of language literacy and a connectivity to a great extent. So helping us build these technologies will again another help we always do. A lot of people are helping us, but everyone is always welcome to help.
Sure. So I took skills, especially on microservices or new technologies, automation and orchestration for infra management as the cloud grows, and again, participate and contribute to your centers of excellence with skills that can augment the capacity. Absolutely good work for us to do, ma'am, and we'll come back with the team on how can we work. Again, thank you. Over to you, Kailash. I don't have more questions for ma'am, but over to you.
No, thank you so much, and thank you so much, Gaurav, and thank you so much, ma'am, for being a part of Governance Now's today's masterclass on cloud with NIC. And what I could infer from from the entire talk was that, first of all, naturally, ma'am listed out all the areas where NIC actually braced itself up right from April, when the lockdown was there, with the end of the financial year, and how new initiatives were taken so that the regular work of the government is also taken care of, and certain new measures which were the need of the hour, and which we still believe that for coming 6 to 8 months, that will be the need of the hour, and also various other issues. Lastly, you mentioned about the availability of the skilled manpower to carry out certain aspects, and the need, the enhanced need for cybersecurity, and how technology can actually help up to it. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us for today's masterclass, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting this session along with me, and thank you so much, ma'am. Namaskar. Over to you, Pragya.
Thank you, Neeta ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Adhikari, and thank you, Gaurav, for joining us today and giving the insights on.
So I think we gave you back 5.
Hi Pragya, this is Murad from VMware. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon, Murad. Thank you for joining us. And we have Mr. Nagesh Shastri, DDG NIC with us, and he will be talking about the key learnings from Aadhaar and various projects that he has been. So over to you, Murad, and welcome, Nagesh, sir.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you are, sir.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Nagesh, sir. This is Murad.
Good afternoon. As Pragya mentioned about the key learnings from large public digital platforms like UPI and Aadhaar, if I may add, I would like to mention a few more large public digital platforms, such as the GST, you are aware, the GST Common Portal, PMJ, GEM, and also NIC's own platform, which is Public Financial Management System developed for Control General of Accounts. So just some time back, DG mentioned about large number of DBT payments being made towards the end of financial year, as well as after the end of financial year during this financial year for facilitating the payments to the beneficiaries of DBT schemes. So PFMS is a platform which enables payment to beneficiaries of DBT schemes, of central schemes, and some of the states also have onboarded. So it's a very, very large platform. Now, the key learnings what we have observed from these large platforms is that these are a combination of centralized and federated architecture. So you can have multiple models when you are building such large platforms. One model could be where entire functionality of the user is performed on the centralized platform. The other model could be the complete functions are performed at the other stakeholders' end. And the third model could be where these two talk together. So part functionalities are performed at the centralized portal and part functions are performed at the other stakeholders' end. And then these two handshake. So GST is a prime example of this, where some of the states have opted for model one, where they collaborate, and the other one where they interact with the GST platform to perform some of their own functions in their own system. So this is another key learning from implementation of these large platforms. And most importantly, use of open technologies. Everything is open, be it technologies or standards or APIs. So if you have if you follow these kind of standards for APIs or for technologies, then achieving integration is not going to be very difficult. These APIs, if they are open, they are put in the public domain, and then other stakeholders can easily adopt to these APIs and integrate with the platform. This is what we have seen in case of all these applications such as GST or GEM or any other platform for that matter. Then regular audits, third-party assessments, and use of encryptions to secure private data is another area which we learned from implementation of this platform. And now, as these platforms become more mature and integrate with more and more stakeholders, the integration of use of emerging technologies such as AI, ML, and analytics will play a major role going forward. So these are some of the key learnings by implementation of these large platforms.
Sure, thank you, sir. And that was great, because when you run or architect applications of this scale, it is always important to understand your point of view in terms of how are you planning that scale, right? So just as an extension to that conversation, we all know that there's been an exponential rise in the demand for digital services during this pandemic, right? So how has NIC really scaled up the infrastructure to cater to that demand? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, as mentioned by DG NIC also, there has been an exponential rise in the requirement of the services during this particular period. See, the services like e-office or the video conferencing were in use earlier also. However, particularly for video conferencing, e-office, cloud services, there was a sudden rush of the demand, and these requirements really shot through the roof. So we, particularly coming to video conferencing solutions, NIC had its own solutions where software-based video conferencing was available, and then the studio-based video conferencing, point-to-point, multi-point, all these were available. However, NIC also used other platforms like Jitsi, etc., for open source, and other platforms such as WebEx and Microsoft Teams. So multiple platforms were used to scale up to the requirements. And apart from that, for the cloud services also, as you all understand and appreciate, there is infrastructure available, then all these services can be scaled up very easily. So what infrastructure was in use prior to the pandemic, that was itself was in heavy use. However, we made all efforts to see these resources were used more and more optimally and fulfill the demands which were made by the users. So that was the key to make use of these resources optimally. And of course, now even for the augmentation of our cloud services, we are making efforts so that, as DG mentioned, that this situation may remain for maybe 6 months to a year. So this is the time when we can augment our infrastructure and be in a position to provide resources on demand.
Sure. And scale is always a favorite topic when it comes to citizen services and government, right? Because whatever you all do, you'll plan it for scale. So while you spoke about a few learnings from the architectures of applications like GSTN and so on, would you be able to shed some light on some of the key learnings from massive application architectures like Aadhaar and UPI, which are out there today, which are very successful models, as a model for building massive scale public digital platforms?
See, what I can see is microservices and containerized deployment of these applications, because you need to break down, because many of these applications were designed quite a few years back. And also these have matured over a period of time. So a lot of patchwork might have undergone in these applications. Perhaps some of these may not even have been anticipated so much growth in terms of usage. Like for example, Aadhaar itself, now you see it's providing so many services. So the Aadhaar authentication per day itself is a very, very large number. Or PFMS also, for that matter. When PFMS was established, it was started as a monitoring system, basically, MIS system. So when the DBT schemes got introduced, it really emerged as a very, very large platform. So when these applications were initially designed, these were not really architected in the sense that they can really scale up to that extent. So as DG had mentioned, that while the cloud services, etc., can be made available on demand, these are not really designed as cloud native applications. So the first thing what we are trying to do is to break these monolith applications into smaller modules or microservices, as you may call it, so that these can be, these are amenable, or really the cloud native applications which can be deployed on-prem or maybe on hybrid model.
Sure. That is interesting to learn. And it is interesting that you also spoke about refactoring or relooking at the application architecture when you're designing for scale, right? So one of the aspects I'm sure is around cybersecurity. So the next question is actually about cybersecurity. If you look at it today, is one of the critical concerns for government organizations, especially with this exponential growth of digital services that we are seeing. Can you share some of the best practices that other government organizations can also adopt when they are looking to deploy infrastructure and applications at the scale?
Yes. See, the cyber threats are ever increasing, and these malicious users are always going to be one step ahead. I mean, that's a fact of life. So we are always playing a catch-up game. Now, there are two ways. See, because in government setup, the employees, although they are there is been increasing awareness about cyber security, still I feel that there's a lot more which can be done to educate the users in government, starting right from the lowest level of the government to the highest level in the government. There's a lot of awareness which needs to be created, particularly in terms of cyber hygiene. So particularly with the mobile devices being used more and more, and the threats emanate from these kind of devices. So there's a need to catch or rather have this kind of cyber awareness created at a very young age amongst the children when they are at the school level itself. That is, of course, one end of the spectrum. But on the other hand, you also have the other end of the spectrum, the people who are, little old and may not be very, very tech savvy. So there's a need to educate these people also, so that they are not exposed to the frauds. So which keep happening, banking, net banking, and taking OTPs and siphoning out the money from their accounts. So in that sense, there is a need to educate the people at an early age, also the people who are senior citizens. That is, of course, in terms of the general this thing. But at the government level also, there are needs for, apart from educating the users, which is an ongoing process because new threats keep emerging. So there is a need for regular awareness, refresher programs. But apart from that, there is a need in terms of, if you really talk about technology interventions, whereas the centralized applications which are deployed in the data center or on cloud, they are secured by way of the security appliances in the data centers. However, applications need to go regular audits. Whenever there are any major updates being brought into the applications, have them security audited. So have this established as a practice. And apart from that, for need the solutions which need to be deployed for securing the desktops, the mobiles, the laptops, tablets, these kind of solutions need to be deployed at various offices of government. That will help in reducing the threats to a large extent.
I think that's a great response, and I completely agree with you. I think while we can throw technology at the problem, you hit the nail on the head when you spoke about empowerment and education of people who deal with technology, right? The elderly people today, kids who are working from home with their own devices, how can they get secure? So I think that's a very critical point. So thanks for stating that. And thank you, Mr. Shastri. I really think you answered the questions really well around scale of infrastructure, scale of applications, the need to relook at application architectures when you're dealing with citizen scale of India. And then finally, you spoke about cybersecurity being a key cog in the wheel when you're trying to define infrastructure and applications at the scale. So really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for answering all the questions for us.
Thank you.
Pragya, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us and giving time. Ashok Paul. And for that, DDG NIC. And for that, I would like to invite Mr. Pankaj Shukla, Director System Engineering, VMware India. And I invite Ashok here.
Thank you, Pragya, and thanks for organizing such a resourceful event exclusively for NIC as far as Cloud 2020 is concerned, right? Let me just, as a precursor to the cloud, let me just give a brief intro about NIC's overall ICT infrastructure. NIC has been closely associated with the government and at central and state government levels, right, in the different aspects of e-governance, which included establishment of a nationwide. We have been actually associated for almost 4 decades. This included actually establishment of a nationwide ICT infrastructure such as a NICNet, NKN, national data centers, VC infrastructure, pan-India, state data centers, national cloud, and so on. So, this is all backend infrastructure which is mandatory for offering any cloud services. So our data center, journey also started from NIC headquarters way back in 2003 with the establishment of a data center, which was actually new at that point in time, of 50 racks in our NIC headquarters, which was followed in establishment of a 110 rack data center infrastructure in NDC Hyderabad. We usually call it as a National Data Center Hyderabad, and which was again followed up with around 144 rack data center infrastructure from NDC Pune. And ultimately in 2011 we came up of a big way and established one of the largest data center in Delhi, that was in Shastri Park. This was fully a virtualized data center at that point in time, and best of the technologies were used. And this was recently again followed up with the establishment of a data center with 275 racks in eastern part of this country, which was also fully cloud enabled. Now, besides this, we are also having around 30 state data centers of 10 to 15 rack capacity in our state capitals. And with this, our overall data center footprint is more than 1 lakh square feet of a data center space, right? And our data center, I'm saying national cloud journey started way back in 2014 with the launch of national cloud services under the ambit of Meghraj, which was a Government of India cloud initiative launched in year 2014 under the ambit of Meghraj, and this was actually driven by MIT, and it was its first kind of a fully owned government owned and managed government cloud. And this was followed up with the launch of a Digital India program, which has drastically, cloud resource requirement has grown, due to which manifold, and due to strengthening of existing e-governance initiatives at that point in time, way back in 2014. So we had to again upscale our cloud infrastructure, which we further enhanced with the introduction of a multi-location cloud services from other data centers, say from data center Hyderabad, Pune, and Bhubaneswar. This was again followed up with, while refreshing our ICT infrastructure in states, we introduced cloud services, keeping view in the benefits of cloud at the central level. We introduced cloud services in the state data centers, which we used to popularly name as a mini cloud. This was actually basically to take care of development, testing, and hosting requirements at the state and district levels. Earlier, we used to have 2 to 3 servers in each district. This has completely eliminated need for any hosting at the district level. Just imagine if presently we are having 740 districts pan India. So 2-3 servers in each district would have meant a huge infrastructure. This all is being taken care now through our NIC state cloud services, right? Yes, sir. This is a brief which I wanted to give you prior to, about our cloud services and overall ICT infrastructure.
Great to hear from you, sir. I think this the entire NIC journey which you just described has been fantastic in the terms of supporting all Digital India projects, from national data centers, state clouds which you have built, to unify the architecture at the district level, etc., and all the automation services, etc., which you are delivering. Great to hear that, Mr. Ashok. So as you, when I come to my first question, as you described that you have many state clouds, you have national data centers at Delhi, Pune, Bhubaneswar, Hyderabad. Do you have any plans to basically unify the delivery of services to government departments? Because how do government departments basically choose that which cloud they need to go? Can you touch upon, and I heard about your One Nation, One Cloud platform. Can you touch upon?
Yes, definitely. We have actually been working on open source based unified service self-service cloud portal, which would be available on cloud.gov.in. All the multi-location cloud services, whether it is national cloud service, state cloud service, open source based cloud services, or COTS based cloud services, all will be unified over this and will be offered from this portal cloud platform. Besides this, also we have actually done a lot of work on open source based cloud cluster stacks based out of OpenStack, which we initially developed in Queen release of OpenStack, and we have recently upgraded it into OpenStack Train release, which is now ready for mass production at a very higher scale from NDC Bhubaneswar and NDC Delhi. This also includes petabytes of self storage, which will be offering in all the flavors, whether block, file, or any kind of a software defined object storage, whatever will be available from this cloud portal to all the government users of NIC.
Sure, sir. So basically, you are trying to build a platform which kind of connects all those data centers.
Yeah, this would be one single platform for whole nation.
Sure, great to hear that. So Ashok sir, I mean, recently with this pandemic and COVID must have thrown a different challenge to support growth in demand from the cloud. what are some of the applications which you onboarded, especially for COVID and COVID-related services, and how do you handle the load which you all of a sudden got from these applications, especially on COVID and COVID-related applications?
As you all know, COVID pandemic has disrupted the normal life, citizen services, and although the way we used to function, government used to function, it accelerated the delivery for development of application services for seamless actually functioning of all the stakeholders under the changed circumstances. This has actually facilitated basically, government to work from home. We have actually facilitated government to work from home using desktop and cloud-based video conferencing solutions and implementing office automation workflows, as DG Madam has already mentioned. Though it was already implemented, but the scale has gone up, and subsequently we had to augment our ICT infrastructure in our data centers for such applications. NIC, besides this, NIC had developed some applications which were specifically meant for COVID, and some of the applications were related to the COVID. Say, for example, PM dashboard. This was developed specifically for daily status and updates on COVID. Then this was followed up with a very important application, RT-PCR. You might have heard, right? This is the testing application, and the testing application, this was made available to all the hospitals, workers at the ground level, and this was also augmented with a portal exclusively for testing and uploading basically COVID related testing data at the hospital level, Anganwadi level, at the block level, district level, state level, whatever it is. This was also used to declare the results of COVID patients post testing. Specimen referral forms were collected and uploaded onto this platform. All these things, have been developed fresh in a very short time, right, in a very agile manner. So besides this, a lot of databases related to COVID various from various hospitals, states, district offices, associations, ASHA, Ayush, Anganwadi, etc. And also an NIDM, National Institute of Disaster Management, which actually is an organization under MHA, had also developed a portal for volunteers, COVID-19 volunteers, which were again also hosted in our cloud. And but first and foremost thing, during this period, we had to facilitate, movement of essential services, movement of officers who work, doing essential services, and movement of goods for essential services. For this at various levels, EPAS software was actually developed at the state, at the center level. This was also done through our cloud, state cloud, national cloud. All this data hub, whatever testing data, mutation data, this was all consolidated in ICMR COVID-19 portal, which was also again developed by NIC, right, and under the guidance of ICMR, right. And also, at the various levels, there was a migration of workers, a migration of even citizens from one state to another state. This was to be managed. As exclusive applications were developed for this at the state level, and there was a migration database at the central level, also developed by NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, which functions under MHA. Right, there were other small apps, developed at the various levels from in the various states. Management of home quarantine, management of containment zones, management of hotspots. All right, and I was just mentioning about some applications which were COVID related. So to ensure that agriculture produce is transported from farmer to the by the transporters to the various locations, a Kisan Rath application, mobile application, was developed for smooth movement of agriculture produce. Right, these were very important applications which has actually, made actually as leader in fight against a COVID pandemic.
No, absolutely. In fact, I mean, NIC has done a great service to the nation. In fact, when during this pandemic and lockdown period, when all the services needed to be delivered and things which we hear in the news, which you are talking, that these are the services which government is launching. And it's great to hear that NIC has contributed to most of them, and then has scaled the infrastructure for running those applications from NIC Megraj Cloud. So great to hear that, Shubh sir. So finally, when you are looking at future, that how are you looking at your cloud infrastructure and cloud models evolving in future with newer capabilities, newer services? For example, as Nita ma'am said that she has opened a center of excellence for microservices and cloud native services, where the people and the organizations, government organizations, are encouraged to develop applications based on microservices. Now your
Yes,
cloud
Pankaj,
will
actually, I was talking to that.
uh,
Basically to leverage the benefits of a cloud, you need to have a cloud native application to really actually benefit the, avail the benefits of cloud. As DG ma'am already told, there's a challenge in converting, existing applications into a cloud native application. But as far as new applications are concerned, we are promoting development of a cloud ready application which are based out of a micro service architecture, wherein actually each service is independent in itself, is an atomic in nature. These services are accessible, can be made accessible through APIs, or modularity of in these services also is very convenient, and it supports independent updates, deployments, and helps to avoid single point failures. And this is also very important to prevent large scale outages in a cloud environment. And also this is very important in vertical and horizontal scaling of your cloud. So we are all the new applications are being developed using microservice architecture, right, as far as possible. So besides this, NIC has actually put in a lot of effort in development of a cloud native tools for DevOps, has actually developed now DevOps ecosystem with continuous integration, delivery, and deployment, complete CI/CD pipeline. These include Kubernetes as a service for management of a configuration, automation of containerized platforms, container as a service wherein user is not bothered with the management of a his containers. It is being done by us. And these, as DGMAP has already told, that we have started giving these resources from containers for various projects. And herein actually container as a service user actually has a primary focus is on his application. Rest all worries are being taken by us. Besides this, we have also created our source code repository, which is available, the way GitHub is there. We have created our own Git, which is also available on the same cloud platform, cloud.gov.in. So, all these things will be exposed in due course, right, and it is presently available to NIC developers. NIC has actually basically, we are actually, though we have not gone public, but we are, as DG ma'am has already told, until those data classifications actually happen, so then only we can go to that next stage. So as far as NIC is concerned, we are doing all the hybrid permutation combination within our data sets. For example, if I am having a primary hosting in my state data center, I'm using basically cloud, which may be in the physical or in the cloud in the state level. I am using DR services from our national cloud for that matter, right? In case of a bigger projects which are of a very large nature, we are offering virtual private cloud on premises, right? And somewhere these projects may be having primary in their VPC, whereas secondary may be in the national cloud, or it may be the vice versa also. Some of the projects actually they are using the mix of the both, though these are actually the hybrid models which actually we are presently using within our data center. As far as these classifications happen, so in future we might go and explore with the CSPs which are already empaneled with MITI.
No, absolutely. In fact, when we say public cloud and hybrid cloud, while generally we mean by accessing the public cloud hyperscalers, etc. But when it comes to NIC, you are already running multiple clouds at a very large
Yeah,
scale, and
exactly.
you are trying to make a hybrid model out of those clouds so that you can share the infrastructure, deliver the e-governance services based on the classification of from national cloud, mini cloud, etc. And that itself is kind of running a hybrid and multi-cloud environment within NIC itself for delivering the
Yes,
governance
we
service.
have been
So
doing it for
that's
quite
great.
some time now.
Yeah, that's great. And in fact, VMware is also engaged. In fact, the most of the focus areas are aligned in terms of
Exactly,
helping
exactly.
hybrid cloud, multi-cloud. How do you build microservices-based applications? How do you run them on Kubernetes infrastructure? How do you secure and scale it?
Yes,
So,
definitely.
I think engage with you, Paul sir, to take this forward. So, thanks a lot for your time, and back to you, Pragya. That's what which I had to ask. So back to you for the next
Thank you,
agenda item.
Pankaj. Thank you, Pragya.
Sir, we have few questions. In fact, not many questions are pouring in through messages on cloud. So there is
Okay.
one I would like to read. Yeah. So this is from the NICT. How many NIC staff is posted to handle GI cloud, and how many outsourced staff is handling GI cloud? And which are the network security and cloud security algorithm used in implementing GI cloud, and what way? And how
So,
users
can I just answer the first question, right? See, all the major strategic services are being handled by the NIC staff itself. See, only support services are being, carried out through outsourced staff, right? Help desk services, right? L2, L1 services are being carried out through, outsourced staff. That too through the managed partners.
And so the question is on security. Next.
Yeah.
So the person is asking about which are the network security and cloud security algorithm used in implementing GI cloud, and what way?
See, we actually work out. We have a specialized, special group for cloud security and a cloud network security, cloud web security, and we work under their framework. All the 10 major, vulnerabilities listed on the OWASP are being taken care, right? As far as the data center security is concerned, we all do have all network level security, starting from DDoS, out of band DDoS service, which is available on the network and gateways. Then we have an inline DDoS service which is available within the NIC data center. Then it is followed by IPS, firewall, then web application firewall, then URL filtering, SSL offloaders. All these things, devices are available, and endpoint security at the end of the day to take care of these issues related to security. Also, our data centers are now, facilitating micro segmentation, right? Each network is separate from other network, right? As far as cloud security is concerned. And we are abiding by the guidelines issued by the government of India, NIC CERT, or iCERT, from time to time, adhering to those guidelines.
So this is what you were right. And sir, the next question: how do you foresee the impact of sustenance of work from home and cloud enablement to large masses?
To a great deal. Actually, we had a tough time, basically, at the time we could not augment much as far as the infrastructure was concerned. So we had to optimize our infrastructure, reduce the level of, basically redundancies at that point in time, and prioritize the, ICT infrastructure for allocation of, the applications which actually facilitated the work from home initiatives, because it was new to the government of India, right? Though NIC was using it, but overall, government of it was new to the government of India spectrum, complete spectrum.
And Pankaj, there is a question for you. You would like to address. Can you OpenShift container integrate with VMware?
Yes, so in fact, the VMware Cloud Foundation, which I was speaking about in the presentation, and the VMware SDDC platform does support other container platforms like OpenShift. So one is on the infrastructure side, it does support OpenShift, and for providing all the infrastructure related services like compute, networking, storage services. But at the same time, we are also coming up with Tanzu platform, which is a Tanzu mission control platform, which kind of help you manage Kubernetes clusters across multiple platforms. So for example, if NIC has an OpenShift platform, NIC has an open source upstream Kubernetes platform, and NIC builds VMware's Tanzu based Kubernetes platform, or tomorrow when NIC goes to AWS, for example, to use the AWS Kubernetes stack, VMware Tanzu Mission Control helps manage across these multiple clusters and multiple clouds. So in both ways, from the infrastructure perspective, as well as from the managing it across multiple Kubernetes distributions is something which we support. Absolutely.
So, sir, there is one more question. Are there plans to provide interoperability between the NIC GI Cloud and other public cloud providers to enable scenarios for cloud hosting migration workloads from one cloud to another, enabling government departments to leverage services of specific cloud? So,
this question is to Pankaj or to me?
So, to you.
See, Pragya, what happens, basically what we're thinking, basically, all the applications which we are actually now developing are based on microservice architecture, then we will be having a compliant API based gateway infrastructure available within us. So whenever we have to interact with any public cloud in that case, so it can be exchanged through the APIs. That won't be a problem. Have I answered it?
Yes, sir. And so then we have taken this question. Okay. Pankaj, there is a question. VM snapshot in VRA7 can be possible. Is this possible?
Yeah, it's absolutely possible. Yes. I think what we can do is that we can touch base with the user who has asked this question and to let him know that how is it possible. Yes.
Okay. So a few more. Sir, I hope you have time. So if we can take a few more questions.
Yes, sure. Why not?
Okay. So I'm just opening the question. Question on cybersecurity is the most prominent that I see. Just a second. Yeah. So there is a comment question. NIC being a premier and torch bearer for Digital India, multi-cloud option seems promising. Where private and public cloud come together, is it possible to combine private cloud of state governments with our Meghraj?
As far as private clouds of state government are there, they would be private. They would be also a government clouds only. Yes, that interaction can happen. You need to work out the modalities for that. At the end of the day, clouds from state governments are also government clouds only. They are not private clouds.
And one of the users want to know more about security issues in cloud, safety of our data privacy. What are the things available in cloud hosting pertaining to cybersecurity?
Again, can you just repeat the question?
So what he wants to know more about security issues in cloud, safety of their data privacy, and what are the things available in cloud hosting pertaining to cybersecurity?
That's what I was. The cloud security is a bit different from the perspective that whatever backend security, network security, and all those things are there in the data center. Besides that, you need to also ensure that your network is properly segmented and separate from, each other. When there's a north and northwest based traffic movement from one user to the another user, that if we are able to secure that, then it is not different from, it is not that complicated. So far as our data centers are now there, they are already micro segmented. Each network is itself a separate network. Movement from lateral movement of traffic is very much secured now. So basically, north to south band traffic is already secured through our network security appliances, whether it's a firewall, whether it's a DDoS. This micro segmentation ensures lateral traffic secure.
I just wanted to add to this answer. I think Ashok sir has rightly said that there is a security which you need to take care at each layer. For example, network layer, application layer, virtualization layer, orchestration layer, and every layer. And you need to build a kind of analytics so that you can get a holistic picture of your security threats and which you can address it. Now, what is important moving forward is that you try to build security inside the infrastructure, so that you don't need to basically put individual software components or security solutions on top of that. So that is which is another thing which is very, very critical moving forward with new emerging architectures, where security is kind of taken care intrinsically at each of these platforms. So as you, for example, if you deploy virtualization, you already have deployed encryption. If you're deploying storage, you are deploying encryption. If you are deploying network, as Ashok sir said, that you are deploying zero trust security, which includes micro-segmentation. So similarly, you need to take care of each of these layers. And from the endpoint perspective as well, you need to take care of security, that if you're delivering applications to end users, are they being delivered in a secure manner? Or at the same time, whether you are getting data and feeds and analytics from all those endpoints, that what kind of security threats you feel and which you can basically address.
Insights. And thank you, Ashok sir, for joining us today and sharing your insights. And, yeah, thank you, Pankaj.
Thanks, Pragya. Thanks, everyone.
You can share your questions with us. You can still share your questions with us. We will be happy to get them answered from our experts. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back at NIC Cloud 2020 with NIC Conclave. And we have Mr. R.S. Mani, DDG NIC. And to moderate, we have Mr. Pankaj Shukla, Director System Engineering, VMware. He will be moderating the session along with me. And so we just wanted your camera also to be visible. So it is possible.
Yeah, if you, I don't know, because I have allowed the camera to come. So, so what do you want me to do? No, this is from mobile.
Okay, then I think
mobile.
Okay, then I think, sir, we have to take it as an audio, because mobile at times does not support. Yes, sir. So, sir, if you share your various digital transformation initiatives that has been taken in the times of pandemic for seamless services for citizens and government organizations.
Yeah. So hi, Pankaj, and so if you could just repeat the question, because there was a slight noise when you actually started.
Oh, so sorry, sir. So just wanted to start with digital transformation initiative that NIC has taken during the times of pandemic, sir, for seamless services for citizens and government organizations.
Yeah, as I was just attending DG's session, and she had covered some of the things that was done during the onset of the pandemic, and you had heard about the sudden requirement of working from home, and that culture was something new for government, in the sense not every government servant was used to working from home. other than the IT sector people. But most of them used to stay at the office late night, late evening, and then do their job and then go back home. But this pandemic, because of the close down, lockdown, not all people could attend the office, so they have to work from home and continue doing their regular work. So that was one of the challenge that was posed on, and of course, we didn't expect that to be coming up. But then still, since the technology was already available to work from home, especially for the NIC officers and system admins and various other administrators of the data center, so we were nearly prepared, and with the cloud and with other computes readily available, we could immediately expand and get work from home IDs for nearly all the government officials so that they can start their work from home. Of course, with work from home, one of the things that got increased was, of course, the cyber threat. The number of attacks that keep coming from various places, that was like crazy, in the sense that it was a very uncontrolled environment, because people have got their own desktops and they use any of the desktop or laptops or mobiles that were available at that point in time to do the VC or to do their normal e-office work or email work or any such thing. So of course it had two challenges, one with respect to the cyber hygiene, and the second one is scaling up for that particular requirement. It was a challenge, but then I think within few days we could achieve all this. And since March, I think 15th or 20th, because we knew that this lockdown will start, so we were ready for from the day one of lockdown, and started giving our users the IDs and access to various platforms. The second effort that went in for most of us, some of our people in NIC headquarters and few from the states, were basically creating a platform for the pandemic contact tracing, which we call, and also it was named as Arogya Setu. And of course, this platform is highly scalable in the sense that it had to cater to few million users, and today we have about 150 million users onboarded, closing to about inching towards 160 million, which is about 16 crore mobile phones, out of which more than 90% is all Android from various versions starting from 5 till 10, and then we have to cater to iOS starting from version 9.3 to 11 now, and now 14. And also we have to cater to some of the very low-end phones of Jio, which is basically the KaiOS. So we had to request some of our people and as well as the Jio to make sure that Arogya Setu works on these two. So right now we have 3 platforms on which Arogya Setu works. And this was a huge scalable system that have been created. And of course, running on a daily basis, everyone is watching it. And now we have opened up Open API, and for MSMEs and small kirana shops, you can know the status of that particular guy, and also the guy who's coming to buy things from his shop, whether he's safe enough to roam around in the market and things like that. So this was one of the exercise that that was like, it started way back in March, and then today it is also still going on. But March, April was a time when we had to really scale up, and when Prime Minister announced, and that day was an unprecedented peak, which you always receive whenever he announces any scheme. But in this also, on that, within 25 minutes, there were so many million people accessing this, and then simultaneously getting registered also. So this was one of the scale. Yeah.
So Pankaj, over to you for more questions.
Yes, sir. So it's great. I mean, the Arogya Setu, the kind of scalability. And in fact, today morning itself, I was checking, and you said 16 crore, and it had hit some 15.9 crore. Great scalability which we have achieved, probably unique in the world, probably. So, but from security point of view, initially when people were using Arogya Setu, there were a lot of questions. But now what we find is that what is it that you do to address the cybersecurity concerns around Arogya Setu? That people are using it and without much concern today. So what are some of the things you did there, sir?
Say in the cyber security space, obviously the first thing that came up on Arogya Setu was the privacy stuff. And also you must have seen a lot of newspaper talking about Elliot's comments on how to identify a corona patient and his location. And from the day one in the design, the privacy was the key for us and security was another key for us. So fundamentally for that, we had also answered through PIB that the location, when you say, nearby 500, when you say 500 on your mobile, it is not actually 500. There is a salt added to it, which is either plus minus, uncertainty added to it. That's basically plus minus 10%. So it could be somewhere between 450 meters to 550 meters. So it could be any.
Okay.
So we were trying to tell you that so many Arogya Setu users are there, so many Arogya Setu people have taken self-test, and so many have declared that they are not well, and so many COVID patients exist. So basically the privacy and the numbers or the names were never released. So this we were trying to explain that this is extremely essential because people need to interact with that particular app. So unless you give statistics, people are not going to interact with the app. So it's important for a person to know in which colony he is living and what is a kind of pandemic spread at that place. So that was the reason we introduced that. But of course, there were a lot of comments on it that you can zero it down about the patient's address by going through a triangulation method. And the triangulation method was just not possible when we did that. So apart from that, a typical app creator, we have the SSL pinning, make sure that no one can copy this app or no one put it on a debug mode and try and use it as. Most importantly, the app, we have ensured that no one can act or spoof as another person and do some kind of mischief in this. The app has been certified and also security tested. Plus, we gave a chance to a lot of people to hack into it and prove themselves. And also, we gave some prize money for people who could find some defect on it. And luckily, no one could get that prize money. That's a different story. But then the thing has proven that. Another one thing that we did from day one was we didn't want to enroll people who are abroad because obviously the app works throughout the world and Android app can be made visible across the world. So this was actually open up only for the Indian IPs. Okay. And only the Indian IPs can do that because we are talking about a pandemic inside the country and not others. We have also open source. In fact, we have kept the source code open and anyone can have a look at it. And in fact, if there are suggestions, we have also welcomed any kind of suggestion that they can give within the ambit of our work so that we can put that in this particular app. So the app has been made, we have made sure that no one has an access except the authorized one on the platform itself for modifying the staging as well as the production servers. But at the same time, we have given very limited access to various aspects of Arogya Setu to the client itself. So if at all I get into your client, I can only do mischief with your statistics and not with others. So that is a kind of security that has been given on it.
Okay. Got it, sir. And in fact, the Arogya Setu, as we see, sir, that the pandemic is already 6 months there, and probably it will go for another year or so. But it appears that this Arogya Setu and contact tracing type of app will something which will be relevant even for times to come in the long term as well. And do you think that there are other use cases which might emerge with similar kind of with this kind of app? Which are related not only to the pandemic, but there are several other things. Do you think that there are other things which might also ride upon this or the similar?
As of yeah, Pankaj, that's a good question. But we were also wondering because this app has been developed. So if the pandemic ends, let's say by December, or in case the contact tracing is no more required after the vaccines are done, because once the vaccine is done, that information also can go into this. And then the reminders, and in fact, after vaccine, if someone gets it, that detailing, etc., can also be taken from the statistics of Arogya Setu. Apart from this, I'm not sure whether this could be a thing which could be integrated in National Health ID also. with modifications, whatever is necessary. But again, these are not, this is a personal opinion, but not yet looked into by the officers. But then, of course, this can be modified into that. But it has definitely taught one lesson that tomorrow, if we have any such requirement, we could fulfill that particular requirement in few days and tweak it and tune the thing into a different what you call app, which will
Okay.
cater
Sure.
to that requirement. Yes, this is a great learning thing that we got it from Arogya Setu.
Okay, sure. So the other thing is that, sir, with this pandemic and Arogya Setu and scalability requirement, which we were able to scale with the application architecture, and you must have used the all cloud native features and architectures to get this scale. But a similar kind of situation comes in any other thing. Do you think that NIC as an organization is also gearing up to handle that kind of scale and change in the use the modern cloud native architectures to basically
Of
build
course.
kind of scale, etc., is something in-house? Is that something which you are looking at, sir?
Yeah, of course, because if you look at the, I'm not sure whether Mr. Nagesh had talked about e-way bill. E-way bill was one of those critical application, because if you understand the e-way bill, for a few hours, if it is down, especially let's say somewhere at the peak time in the evening, you will see all kinds of trucks with carrying perishable goods or non-perishable, whatever it is, they will just line up, because unless they have the e-way bill, they may not be able to travel and take the goods further. So we have got certain applications already there in NIC data centers, which are scalable. However, because this requirement came all of a sudden, and we knew that we are trying to think of covering more than 40 to 50 crore, which is about 400 million smartphone users. Statistics itself is about 40 to 50. Yeah. Am I not audible?
Yeah, we were losing you in between, sir. Last maybe
Okay.
10-15 seconds.
So
Yeah.
in March itself, we knew that there are more than 50 crore smartphone users across the country. So we knew that the scale is going to be very high, and the requirements have to be done within 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks, which was not practical to run it on a data center where we didn't have this much of scalability. Of course, the hardware has to be there to really scale. That's the first point. Apart from the software for scaling, the most important thing is baseline is the hardware. And since we knew that at that time we didn't have, and also buying during pandemic where all the flights are closed and most of the airports being closed is not going to be easy. So that's the reason we immediately thought that it is a better thing to switch over to that place. And of course, if it is a planned activity where we know that, okay, in the next 3 months, I need to scale like this, or this is what I want to create, we would be more than happy to do that. And some portion could be hybrid also. Like, for example, certain things where you jump in for just a day or 2 days whenever there is a big announcements, etc. So you can cater to those peak loads using a kind of a hybrid cloud philosophy, and try and see who can help us during that time. Though all these testings have been already done about a couple of years back with a couple of big service providers, cloud service providers. So I'm sure if the requirement comes, we will be able to scale. And with the kind of cloud systems that we have in NIC, which is very much compatible with other cloud systems across the country, across the globe, I don't see this as a challenge actually.
Yeah, in fact, sir, I mean, on to that point, in fact, from VMware perspective, we know that VMware cloud, which typically runs on all public clouds, which is Cloud Foundation, including AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, and all multi providers, that kind of can help basically to build a hybrid cloud where you migrate your workload, scale there, and if you required, you can come back seamlessly to, because you have a consistent infrastructure across all of them. So that's
of course. Also, we are also trying to have good connectivity with some of these service providers, like for example Microsoft and Google and few others. Very soon we may do the same with Amazon also. So most of the real hyperscale guys will be directly hooked onto a national knowledge network and thereby to NICNet. So all the data centers will have a good speed to connect to the other clouds, and thereby not depending on the internet's best effort method. And you will be able to what you call sync up your data, as well as scale up what is publicly, which can be easily done into any of these hyperscale clouds. And since NIC, I think most of the NIC's data center uses the VMware, so it becomes much more easier for getting onto the hybrid cloud. Yeah.
Absolutely. So coming back to the NIC itself, and since you had the CERT and the security NIC CERT as well, what do you think are some of the initiatives which you are basically taking, and what is the suggestion you have for other government organizations in terms of cyber security in the context of CERT and initiatives which you are taking? Can you just give us
Yeah, so yeah, actually during this pandemic, I think all these hackers and other guys have been trying their level best to do what they could, because they can they know that they have a lot of vulnerable PCs across the country sitting at home, and especially in this place where we have a lot of pirated softwares and free softwares, and you name it, it runs on your PC. So it becomes absolutely a dangerous thing to
sir, we are losing you.
we are trying to create a situation and also awareness across the country in the government system, and we are trying to create a lot of stories to showcase how hackers really take control of situation, and also create certain exercises or a dummy exercises so that we can say that, hey, you, let's say I do a phishing what do you call exercise, and see how many people are really getting or clicking on those and then getting trapped into whatever loopholes that we created. So we are trying to see that. Plus, most important is trying to automate some of the things. So we have done a few of the work on automation and creating bots. Second is the logging and then machine learning on logs. So we are trying to now, we have got a project from the National Cybersecurity Coordinator, so we are onto it. So probably we'll be doing a complete logging system along with machine learning and artificial intelligence, so that we can predict and also probably take proactive step in stopping any attempts that we think might happen. So these are some of the activities that we are anyway doing on from the CERT point of view.
Okay. Great, sir. So finally, just one last question, sir, on the security piece itself, is that you know that with all emerging threat landscape, we have hundreds of security solutions, and probably the security is one thing where you'll have so many solutions built on the infrastructure and applications when you try and build. But getting an analytics out of this, getting sense of all those security solutions which are built on top of that, is something which is a real challenge. So there is another concept which is coming is of the intrinsic security, where you try and build security right there in the infrastructure or in the platform. Do you think that this is a model which in future is going to help and basically address the security challenges and probably unify and give a holistic sense of all security threats and how can you address them?
I think you have hit the nail, because this is exactly what we are trying to think of and trying to achieve is because there are so many security components. I think whatever we do, we have to keep that security as first. So far, we have been making developments and we are doing everything, just creating a software. But I think whether it's a platform, whether we are talking about any kind of cloud platform or any kind of network platform that we are trying to create, the security should be built into it. And also, you have lots of devices which are pouring in security logs and which just remain as archives forever in the past. We need to look at those logs on a near real-time basis. So of course, the analytics solutions as well as building infrastructure with security as the first choice or the first principle, it's extremely important. So I'm sure any amount of knowledge, any amount of collaboration in this area will fall short. So it's very, very important that we also try and design our system in such a way that starting from the client access up to the server, everything and anything that comes in between, we must have a clear visibility of everything that is happening. And most importantly, understanding of what is happening through analytics is extremely critical. So I think that is an area where I think we need to put a lot of efforts. So any collaboration on this would be really great.
Absolutely, sir. In fact, if you look at the recent announcements from VMware, and since VMware kind of touches all the points, which is whether network, virtualization, cloud, AirWatch, if you know, which is the mobile device management, workspace ONE
Of
for
course.
Windows management, endpoints, etc. Since we touch all those points, we have the context of coming out of that infrastructure. What we are trying to do is that we are trying to build in, make security built into each of these infrastructure layers and the endpoints, and at the same time we are trying to get context out of it to create a holistic security and analytics model. So we'll be happy to collaborate with you on this effort, sir. Absolutely. So yeah, so thanks a lot, sir. I think Pragya, that's it from my side. Thanks a lot for your time, sir. I know that you are extremely busy and you are not taking time in this time to basically help us with these.
Thank you so much, Mani sir.
Thank you so much, Pankaj. Yeah. Thank you, Pragya. Thank you so much.
Pankaj sir will share the report. We will compile the entire discussion in the format of report and will share with you and the entire NIC team.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us and stayed with us. And it was for RS Mani sir, and he shared his insights on Arogya Setu app and other cloud related initiatives that NIC is taking. Thank you VMware for joining us as a partner for Cloud 2020 with NIC Virtual Conclave. And thank you the entire NIC team from state and the center for being here with us till the end. Thank you so much, attendees. Now we take your leave. Thank you.